Following the recent stunning firings from the governing body, George Russell and the others drivers have lashed out at the FIA and have urged that they provide Formula One drivers with some clarity on who is getting fired next, so they have some insight in what's going to happen in their sport. According to reports, the FIA has seen further instability ahead of the Qatar Grand Prix, with 2 major players being dismissed, and the drivers have had enough. They've had enough trouble with the FIA in recent years, ever since Ben Sulayem took over, and it's only getting worse at this rate. F2 race director Jeanette Tan was fired just before she was supposed to take over the series' last 2 rounds. Therefore, current F1 race director Rui Marques has taken on additional responsibilities for the time being. Furthermore, senior steward Tim Mayer has been removed from the roster following an apparent dispute with FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem over the track invasion at the United States Grand Prix. The recent changes, which come only a few weeks after the abrupt resignation of F1 race director Niels Wittich, have raised fresh concerns among drivers who are keen for greater consistency from the FIA. Russell, director of the Grand Prix Drivers Association, believes that the FIA's communication with competitors has to be better, noting that he learnt of Tan's resignation through the media. I mean, just when we've asked for, let's say, a bit of transparency and consistency, we're getting rid of 2 highly important people in the governing body, Russell said of the latest departure. So it's kind of gone in a full 360. We still don't have any reasoning for Niels's removal. I don't think anybody was informed about Tim leaving, and the first I heard about the new race director doing Formula 2 this weekend as well was through the media. Russell acknowledged that a high staff turnover was not ideal for any company, but he believed it was critical that the FIA provide some answers about what was going on, particularly what was planned for the future. Naturally, in any organization, if you've got people leaving or a change of personnel, it is never going to be a stable environment, and people have to learn the new rules, he said. That's very challenging for any team, and it must be super challenging for everyone within the FIA right now. We'd love to get a little bit of clarity and understanding of what's going on, and, who's getting fired next. While Tan and Mayer's resignation are alarming in and of itself, they come amid an avalanche of FIA departures in recent months. In October, it fired its head of communications, Luke Skipper, and Secretary General of Mobility, Jacob Bangsgaard. Late last year, Sports Director Steve Nielsen and Single-Seater Technical Director Tim Goss departed, as did Deborah Mayer, Chair of the FIA Women in Motorsport Commission. Natalie Robin, the FIA's first CEO, also left the company in May after less than 2 years in the position. Russell believes that what happened at the FIA will not have far-reaching consequences as F1 continues to thrive under Liberty Media. Definitely when it comes to the FIA, so much is changing. Too much is changing and too quickly, the Mercedes driver said. I think everybody has faith in Liberty and faith in Stefano Domenicali. He was a racer, and racing is in his blood, so he's doing everything he can to get the sport in the best place possible. I think the only concern for all of us is that the sport is in such a great place. Everyone's trying their best for the teams, and Liberty and Stefano have done such a great job. We just need to make sure that the sport stays in this position, or continues to grow. And the only thing with all of this change, I hope it's not going to have a negative impact. But that isn't all, as the drivers also got annoyed with track changes during weekends, and at first the FIA was hesitant to do anything about it. However, following a long discussion with the drivers before of the Qatar Grand Prix, changes to Formula One's racing regulations governing aggressive moves on inside lines are likely. Following Max Verstappen's clash with Lando Norris in Austin last month, the FIA agreed to re-evaluating F1's driving standards guidelines, which govern stewards' judgments on disputed racing movements, as well as how drivers carry out their maneuvers. The FIA decided to disclose its findings to the drivers at this weekend's Qatar event, after they all agreed that modifications were necessary due to the circumstances surrounding the Red Bull driver's moves against his McLaren competitor. The reason for coming back to the drivers before the 2024 season concluded was to get their subsequent feedback on the proposed changes, as well as getting them tested in race situations. The meeting began at 7:30 p.m. local time in Qatar on Thursday, rather than the regular post-FP2 slot for the traditional drivers' meeting due to the sprint format this weekend, and lasted over an hour. Many teams were surprised by how long the conversations lasted, since they covered a wide spectrum of racing scenarios and improvement ideas. However, Mercedes driver George Russell, the sole active racing director of the Grand Prix Drivers Association, stated afterwards, "The main discussion was about overtaking. A lot of drivers are aligned that if you are the overtaking car on the inside, rule number one is you have to be able to stay on the circuit," he said, when asked if Verstappen's Austin tactics had been closed down as a consequence of the meeting. "If you're able to stay on the circuit, you are in your right to run the driver wide, as it has been for all of us since go-karting. If you're overtaking somebody on the inside, you've got the right to run them wide." He later added, "Right now there is a line of regulation that says the inside driver needs to leave room to the guy on the outside from the apex to the exit. I think that's going to be getting binned off, and I hope it's going to be from this weekend onwards." It was pretty productive, Russell stated of the entire meeting. "I think we all agree that the guidelines, they don't need massive changes. I think they just need the odd sentence removed or adjusted. But I think everybody's clear with what happened in Austin, what should have been a penalty, what happened in Mexico, where Verstappen was sanctioned twice for his subsequent moves against Norris, was rightly penalised. And generally speaking, over the course of the year, I think the decisions have been pretty good. It was just probably Austin that was the outlier. So, yeah, just fine tweaks." When Verstappen faced the media shortly after Russell, he said, "The main problem is the tracks that allow these kind of things. If you have gravel, that actually stops you from doing things that, taking a bit more risk than normal." Russell said of this, "We also concluded that most of these issues are down to the circuits. We spoke about a number of the issues in Austin. I think a lot of the overtakes wouldn't have even been attempted had there been gravel there, such as Austria Turn 4, the downhill right-hander. You're going to go in the gravel if you go in 1 to 2% over the limit. Silverstone, at Stowe, there was obviously a great race in a couple of years ago with Lewis Hamilton and Checo Perez and Charles Leclerc in 2022. Ultimately, everyone was off the track, but that's because the track allowed you. The circuits are the root cause, and the guidelines are kind of like an interim fix that we need to agree on, until we can get all of the circuits in a proper manner." When asked what the meeting meant for the restrictions about a driver passing on the outside, Russell replied, "I think the overtaking rules on the outside will not be changing much, and I don't think we've really seen much of a problem with that." Hamilton revealed the scale of the discussions on Thursday night when he stated, "There was talk of like a warning being issued to drivers that went against the racing rules, similar to such rules in other sports. That's basically like yellow card in your hand. You know you're going to have that one warning," he added. However, the 7-time world champion added that the drivers had decided that this was a non-starter, since waiting until the last race of the year to use your one warning does not work. "So, we're just working away together," he said. "I think just from that meeting, we definitely will be moving in the right direction. And changes to the track and rules are already anticipated this weekend, with plenty of track changes. Want to know more about that? Click the video on your screen right now. Here we dive into the specific changes for this weekend."